Victory Monday, my friends. The first place by technicality. New York Football Giants win again, this time in their home opener, giving fans plenty to cheer about. 19-16 over those visiting Carolina Panthers. We break it all down, the good, the potentially concerning, and where this team really stacks up as we start to look forward on the schedule. Yes, friends, it's OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where, of course, we are your hosts over here, Adam Arbert, breaking down the Brooklyn Nets on the Locked On Nets podcast with my boy, Doug Norrie. And yonder there, the in attendance season generational ticket holder, the healthy, wealthy, and wise, fresh off a win, Mr. Andrew.
Man, the weather was beautiful. MetLife was rocking. Adam, I saw even Art Stapleton came out and said that was easily the loudest that the stadium has been in at least 5 years. So it just gives you something. It shows how much the fans are reacting to the effort that the team is putting out on the field. It really is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, you need to be in ball games, right? You need to be having opportunities to win to get the fan base excited. And we said on our preview episode, Wink Martindale looking for the fan base to get loud, and we will give you plenty to cheer about. The Giants did exactly that, right? You come, listen. We'll get into some of the other elements of what will we take away from this game, right? But 19-16, the Giants get the win, and it all starts. I mentioned Wink Martindale. That's where this game starts and maybe ultimately finishes when you think about it. 2 turnovers early in this game. The offense only converts into 6 points. Brian Dable talks about that being a little disappointing on the back end of this one. But for a defense that lost its starting number 2 cornerback in Aaron Robinson, that got only disappointing news when it came to Kayvon Thibodeau or Azeez Ojulari being available for this one. I tell you what, man, Wink Martindale seems to know how to, and we already knew, not just run a defense, but have this amorphous defense. I think something that reputationally we maybe didn't think that he was going to be capable of doing coming into this job.
Yeah, we talk about how he got relieved of his duties in Baltimore. Things kind of went downhill. Had a great defense for a while, but then was decimated with injuries with the Baltimore Ravens, especially in the secondary. And his defense just fell apart at that point. They gave up so many points, so many touchdowns. So it was kind of concerning, Adam, coming here where guess what our weakest part is? Our secondary. Where are we the most thin? Our secondary. It's like we're seeing the same problems over and over again. Is Wink going to be able to overcome them? And he passed both of those tests with flying colors. Like the defense is clearly the heart and soul of this team. And he does have a crazy ability to interchange players in positions and just run his scheme to be able to manufacture turnovers, to be able to disguise pressures. It was impressive to see what Wink Martindale was able to do. I mean, giving up 16 points in the NFL in these days is wonderful. You would immediately sign up for that right now. If you could say the Giants would give up 16 points a game, that would be a playoff team.
Yeah, I know 100%. And we'll talk about that a little bit too, where the way things look in the division, the way things look over the NFC in general. But to your point, we anticipated, we talked about the Giants were going to try to use a lot of different looks out of the safety position. They did that, right? Julian Love was in the backfield on a number of occasions. And they talked about it on the broadcast, the play where Xavier McKinney comes firing in, misses Baker Mayfield as he sidesteps him on the sack there, but then turns on a dime and sprints to track down Baker Mayfield at the sideline there, only gives up a yard or 2 on the scramble. That was indicative, I think, of where this defensive unit is, right? It's fully locked in, trying to make those big plays, but also being committed to what the back end of that looks like. McKinney jumped out to me. Julian Love jumped out to me. Oshane Ximines, man, he got talked about a lot too. This is now 2 weeks in a row. This is a guy that, we said this before, there's players that are carryovers or holdovers from the previous regime. Weren't sure they're going to work out, especially in the absence of Kayvon Thibodeau and of Azeez Ojulari. Leonard Williams goes down in this game. Like, Ximines needed to be doing what he was doing, and that was getting consistent pressure. It was making the smart plays when we talk about drifting out on the edge, waiting for Baker Mayfield to commit to being mobile, and then saying, okay, I need to get downhill and attack and put more pressure on the quarterback. I thought two really, really good games from him now, back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, Ximines was awesome, and you really got to give the guy credit because most fans were like, "Is he a cut casualty? Is he not going to make this roster?" Just because we had seen him for multiple years, but it's really impressive what a new scheme and what a new system and new coaching staff can do. All of a sudden, he looks rejuvenated. He's a key contributor on this team, not just a guy on the back end of the roster, as you mentioned with Thibodeau and Ojulari out. We need someone to manufacture pressure, and it's been Oshane so far for the Giants. And so on the defensive side of the ball, that was good. I think seeing Dane Belton out there, he had a couple of tackles, popped the guy pretty good. That's kind of what you're expecting to see from him. You know,
I'm not trying to bury certain leads here, but there was a lot of then different things happened here. Like Dane Belton, after being injured, to your point, coming back and just kind of being like, yeah, I'm ready to contribute. Like, it didn't look like he wasn't out of place. Didn't look like he was trying to get his feet wet. He was, no, I'm here. I'm making plays. Let's go.
Yep, it was impressive to see. You mentioned Julian Love. He felt like he was all over the field. He had a very well-rounded performance. He is really taking shape as a leader on the defense. It is impressive to see. And you know, we went into this saying that Julian Love may not be on this roster. Now I couldn't imagine this team without Julian Love because he's playing so well. So like credit where credit's due. He's really stepped up and taken a leadership role in that defense, Adam.
No, 100%, man. Cordell Flott, he got in there as well. Basically, they threw him to the Wolves, getting in there to replace Aaron Robinson. He had his struggles, as you anticipate, but it took a little while for him to struggle, which I think, I mean, in a positive way, right? He ultimately gets turned around. You're getting asked to watch DJ Moore downfield. It's not the easiest, assignment in the world, and he stumbles in the end zone on that touchdown pass from Baker Mayfield. But overall, you've got, I think the point is kind of illustrated there, right? You're missing multiple starters. You're asking a lot of young talent to step in and be contributors in big moments. And for the most part, they're passing that test on the defensive side of the ball. When we turn our attention over to the offensive side, just this game overall, I think we start with just the golden foot, right? Graham Gano, just a Mr. Machine. It's so funny too. He's been here, but the reliability of saying like, and the Giants are going to go for a field goal. You're like, oh, great. Not like, okay, I mean, if that's what you think's the best idea here, it's only 3rd and 19 from our own 20. Maybe we just go for it. Like there's a level of comfort when you hear that play call get made too.
Adam, I am shocked, and you have evolved as a person because I thought you were going to try to go the whole episode without talking about anything involving special teams because you forgot that special teams was part of the 53-man roster when we were doing the projections. You forgot about Graham Gano, and guess what? He is such a safety and security blanket for the Giants to have. Like the fact that we're attempting 56-yard field goals with 3 minutes to go. If the Giants miss that kick, if Graham Gano misses the kick, Baker Mayfield has the ball basically at midfield with 3 timeouts ready to move the ball down the field. And like 36, 33, 51, 56 yards. Graham Gano, 4 for 4, never a doubt. But there's been previous kickers and previous times for Giant fans where kicker comes on, you're like, why are we trying this 55-yarder? Like this has got no chance. And the MetLife swirling winds. You know what? Graham Gano was drilling those long ones low too. He was making sure they were on point. Adam, it is really great to have a kicker like that, knowing that every time you can get past the 50-yard line, you're basically guaranteeing yourself points if you don't turn the ball over.
100%. Shout out to Tyrone. Shout out to Marty. Tardy. We're not going to hold it against you this time. But thank you for coming in on the live stream over on YouTube as well. Yeah, I think the special teams obviously gets that early turnover on the opening kickoff. They do it again in that second drive there. So very quickly, the Giants have an opportunity to have success. And I think when we start to look over at the offensive side of the ball and the value that Graham Gano brought to this team, I start to go a little high level, right? Because the Giants won, and that is the end all be all number one. They are number one in the NFC East until maybe entering a tie, depending on what happens with Philadelphia. But how about that, right? Being 2-0 sets you up for season success, regardless of what the ultimate goals are here. Winning your first 2 games, that can parlay into a winning record for the season, right? Surprising some teams, getting some W's. And yesterday to me felt more than ever like an indication of it's going to take full team efforts on a week-to-week basis for this team to win games. It's not a game where Saquon Barkley ran for 200 yards like we, hoped that he would against a very fast-paced Carolina Panthers defense, a defense that got pressure on Daniel Jones. It wasn't a game where Daniel Jones even had as bright of a couple of moments as he had in week one. Still had a nice drive, 4-6 on that touchdown drive that they put together. But overall, it was everybody's got to hit their mark here. If we can do that on a week-to-week basis, we can win ball games. I think that we're starting to get a sense of what it means for this team to win in 2022.
We don't have Aaron Rodgers. We don't have Tom Brady back there,
That's true.
and that's
Hold on,
okay.
wait. No,
No,
he's not
yeah,
back there.
you checked,
They're
not
not back
there?
there.
Okay, okay. Well, the thing is, Adam, we don't have one of those superstar MVP top 5 level quarterbacks that just says, "Put the team on my shoulders. I'm gonna go win a football game." But that's okay, and we're understanding now how to win. I don't want Giant fans to get jaded at the fact that we won a game and you still kind of feel like, we didn't play our best football. Like, that's a good thing. That should be a good thing. Everyone should be
Yeah.
excited. The Giants are 2-0. We have not been 2-0 in forever. We haven't had a winning record in almost like 6-7 years. It's impressive to see the Giants are finding different ways to win. Like you said, in Tennessee, it was all about Saquon Barkley getting him the ball. Saquon was running hard, really didn't get any pops in this game. It felt like he was kind of just trudging along for 3 or 4 yards a carry. Obviously, the offensive line is still not where we need it to be yet, Adam. Evan Neal, as a rookie, looked like a rookie against Brian Burns. Brian Burns was turning him all over the place. Evan Neal was back on his heels for half of the game. My cousin texted me. He said, instead of calling him Evan Neal, we'll call him Evan Heels because he's on his heels constantly, during the pass rush. There is not a lot of things from the offensive line perspective that you're excited about other than Andrew Thomas. But again, the Giants are finding ways to win. Richie James, big contributor. Sterling Shepard, big contributor. Daniel Bellinger, big touchdown grab, able to extend the ball out. The Giants don't have a ton of superstars on offense. They need every single person to do their job and do their job effectively to win games. That's just how I see it for the rest of the season.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of it too, right? I don't see that just instantly changing here on a dime. We saw a little bit more of Kadarius Toney in this one, not effective, but they tried to get him out there, tried to get him more involved. Didn't see any Kenny Galladay in this game. And the one thing that I'll point to again, because I think it's a good theme on a Monday, is this is about Brian Dable said, yeah, the game plan, the game script, what we're looking to do, how we think we can accomplish it. It's just everyone, you've been stripped of your titles, right? And it's funny to think about the defensive side of the ball. Most guys have maintained or elevated their titles on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, more of the high profile names, or at least the more familiar names to Giants fans, have seen themselves be downgraded here. A shout out to it was a Tanner Hudson there, tight end as well, who he was doing the heavy lifting for most of this game out of the tight end spot as far as getting some receptions and helping move the chains. And then to your point, the rookie Daniel Bellinger, no better first reception of your NFL career than full extension dive there for the touchdown in the end zone. But I think you're right. Listen, you go inside the numbers offensively in this game, and I said it to you before we got on, combined 53 QBR for Baker Mayfield and Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones did at the 37.3 out of that breakdown there, but 22 of 34, $176, no interceptions, right? That's important. No fumbles. That's important, right? So plays a clean game, has the one touchdown. But as you and I had talked about, when you start to open it up a bit more, right? You start to give him more opportunities. And in a game when the Giants got down, which is a little bit different, even though they trailed 13-0 in week one, although I think there's a common theme in a different way. The Giants stay the course. Like, I think whatever their game script is, they have a belief in it. They're going to make their adjustments, but they're not going to overreact one way or the other. This was a game, though, where it's back and forth. The Giants get down. I thought Daniel Jones struggled on some of his deep throws. The accuracy was not there on that particular day, and ends up going 22 of 34. Like, I think the more you open it up, the little bit shakier it can get. Now, they did the naked bootleg again on a fourth down that he picked up the yardage for. Did a really nice job getting away from the defender on that one. By and large, I have mostly positive things to say about Daniel Jones, and it stays right in the wheelhouse that I came into the season with. He hasn't done anything to change how I feel about him, and I mean that as a positive. Things have not, I don't feel any worse about him at this point through 2 games. I'm just not necessarily elevating him yet to this point. These are team wins, and Daniel Jones is not, as you said, the Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady's of the world, or even what that second tier is, below them. And that's okay. It's 2 weeks into the season. It need not be that 2 games in.
65% completion percentage, would sign up for that. So that was good. And you said he didn't turn the ball over. He really didn't make the big mistakes. That was the thing, right? Like he didn't make the all world type throw or play that you want to see from a quarterback, but he just didn't turn the ball over, didn't make mistakes, didn't
Mhm.
put his team in a bad spot. And Adam, when you get the ball back and Carolina has 3 timeouts and you have to go pick up a couple of first downs to salt the game away, what do? Daniel Jones drops back, sees that he's got space in front of him, takes the space, gets down, ends the game over. And so, like, his decision making was much, much better. And if this is what we're seeing as the evolution of Daniel Jones, this team will compete and be in quite a few games this season.
Yeah, and it's funny too because the type of plays haven't necessarily been as eye-catching as you'd want them to be, but that's back-to-back weeks where Daniel Jones has had the ball in his hand to make the decision about how are we going to be successful to close this game out. To your point, right? We're going to drop you back. We're going to put you in space. Worst, I think Dable said this in the postgame. It was a worst-case scenario. Go down, take the sack. Don't take any risks. And Daniel Jones sees the opportunity. And first time I thought that Daniel Jones running, that was as quick as I've seen him look with the ball in his hands. So far this season, he's looked a little bit tentative, just a little bit clunky, right? And that's okay. It's not a bad thing. You mentioned about trying to make sure he's protecting that football. But the first time where it was like, I see space, the time of the game, go attack it, end this thing right now. Like, that's my opportunity as the quarterback. And he helps guide this team collectively to a week 1 win. One thing I wanted to point out here when we're talking about the offensive side of the ball, Andy, is there has been this shuffling. What looks like is going to be a staple is Sterling Shepard is going to be a part of what they do offensively. He's been there consistently. Everyone knows, fan favorite, longest tenured Giant. But also, man, there's no getting around. Richie James, 5 for 51, just a long of 15 on 6 targets, though. Like, and I'm going to add in David Sills here, who didn't really have much to do last week, but this week gets 3 catches, 37 yards as well. The reliable players are not the players that you necessarily thought they were going to be on the offensive side of the ball. That's 100% fine. The Giants, Brian Dable and Mike Kafka, are putting an emphasis on people that can play consistently and understand where they need to be, as opposed to what could be dynamic, could be explosive. But yesterday was an example of it. And I'm not even knocking Kadarius Toney. When he had his opportunities, there were a lot of negative plays there because they are the gadget plays, right? They're the ones that have some high risk and really big reward. But right now, the Giants just need to be consistent. They don't need to be dynamic at this point of the season.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit more about Kenny Galladay. So Kenny Galladay, 2 snaps,
I like it.
two
Solid.
snaps total. I mean, it's kind of ironic that he's our most expensive offensive player, and he basically only sees 2 snaps on the field.
Those are pricey snaps on a per snap.
Those are very expensive. If you go cost per snap, you're really, I mean, never mind targets.
Yeah.
So he only had 2 snaps, 0 targets, obviously no catches. Afterwards, there's a 15-minute cool-off period where the team gets to, just take a deep breath after a win before the media has access. By the time the media came in, Ryan Dunleavy of the Post, I believe, said Kenny Galladay had left the building, cleared out his locker, and was nothing was even remotely in his locker. Telling a lot of people are drawing conclusions that he's that angry that he just wants to get out of here. My question is this sustainable with Kenny Galladay? Like, do you think that he's going to either get in line and say, I'm okay with this rotation, or is he just going to say, I need to get out of here? Like, I need to be in a different situation than what I'm in.
Well, I don't think it matters if it's sustainable, right? The Giants are 2-0 without him being a large part of the process there. By the way, that's the game day locker. They reported that like it was the same thing for Kadarius Toney the week prior, as far as not being there, being available, frustrating day. I get it. So I'm not going to overly read into it, but what I will read into is just he hasn't been a big part of the offense. The Giants have still won football games. Now there's going to be games when they need to score way more points and they need bigger red zone targets. But again, I'll point right back to the fact that David Sills had some catches in this game. That matters. David Sills has been a name we know and has also been a name that doesn't matter when it comes to regular season football. If he's starting to show that he's capable of contributing on Sundays, well, now you have something. I don't know if it's to the level of whatever Kenny Galladay once was. Maybe not. Don't care. There's someone that's there that can contribute. Is Richie James Kadarius Toney? No, he's not. But he's helping to move the chains, right? So, to me, the Giants are on the hook for it. And I know we're seeing Chris there asking in the chat about how much it would be to straight cut Kenny Galladay. That's not going to be an option on the table. Going to be a massive dead cap hit if they were to do that. And it doesn't look like there's going to be an opportunity to trade him, at least at this point of the season, because who's going to take on that? The bottom line being, though, if you want to be a part of it, if you can be a part of it, great. And if you don't, that's all right. Like we talk, you and I talk so much in the preseason about in the offseason about how if they can move off of Kenny Galladay, I would, because it's a young team, developing team. You just want to turn the page on that. Well, guess what? They're effectively doing it, even if they're not doing it, by moving him off the roster. It's okay. Like this is what it is. Evaluation and production is what matters most for Brian Daboll. And right now, Kenny Galladay has not been a part of those game scripts. And by the way, if I wanted to give a little silver lining here for him, it's that the more dynamic and expansive the offensive playbook gets is potentially the more value that he has as a big-bodied receiver that can go up and get some of those jump ball opportunities.
The answer is simple. Kenny Galladay's contract is his cap hit is $21 million. If they were to release him, it would be $31 million in dead cap. They are better wasting a roster spot, keeping him on the bench than they are outright releasing him and losing $7 or $8 million in additional cap space for the season. Like that's how crazy this is. So to your point, I agree. You're going to have Kenny Galladay on this roster unless he finds a way out. I don't see how that's possible, but the Giants aren't going to make any moves because it just shows me, Adam, that if the Giants had no dead cap hit cutting Kenny Galladay, he would not be on this roster right now, right? I think you can all agree.
100%.
Like, there's no chance that he's even there. The only reason why he's there is because he's more expensive to release than he is to keep on the roster, which is surprising. The one thing I will say about Richie James, just kind of pivoting a little bit, is he is doing great at contributing at the role that they're asking him to do. It kind of feels like Richie James is getting all the touches that Wan'Dale Robinson would get if he was out there and healthy. And it feels like once he is able to come back, I wonder if they're just going to kind of put Richie James back into the special teams contributor role and say, thank you for stepping up. You gave us 4 or 5 grabs here. We know that we can rely on you if and when the time comes, but we drafted Wan'Dale Robinson for a reason.
I think you're right about that too, and it's funny because it works in tandem with Kadarius Toney not necessarily being out there as much. Although, again, just to be clear, he did have 38% of the snaps, I think, in this one. So definitely saw more from Kadarius Toney. 28 total snaps here. The production isn't quite there yet, but I think that he's on a much different path, obviously, as he should be as a second-year wide receiver than Kenny Galladay. But in his absence, Sterling Shepard, he's the guy that we know he does have speed, right? And he probably is the most refined, he is the most refined wide receiver there. So in terms of getting off the line, beating his man, giving some opportunities, Daniel Jones didn't find him on Sunday for them, but he looks like he's the field stretcher in a lot of ways. Remember, no Darius Slayton really out there being healthy scratches. So Richie James plugging into that slot kind of role makes a lot of sense. Effectively, what you had yesterday was Richie James, David Sills, some Sterling Shepard sprinkled in, top 3 wide receivers, just like we always anticipated.
Just how you drew it up. Yep. Just how you drew it up, Adam. It is interesting to think that is the core. When going into the season, you thought it was, Kenny Galladay, Darius Slayton, and maybe Kadarius Toney in the middle, and now all of a sudden things are completely flipping the script.
Yeah,
Adam, I have a question for you, and I can't put my finger on it, but the feelings of Giant fans after Week 1 was like a sense of relief, a sense of optimism, a sense
elation.
Like it just felt very, very different than what we've been accustomed to for the last 5 years. This was a grinded out coaching, putting people in the right situations, don't make mistakes, win, but it doesn't feel as good as Week 1 did for a lot of people. Even myself included. I was there, and it was like a sigh of relief that we won that game and we didn't blow it, more than like, all right, we got another win over our shoulder. What's next? What do you think is contributing to that for Giant fans? Is there something that you could put your finger on?
Yeah, well, remember, I thought that the Giants might lose this game, right? And it was for a lot of the reasons that I was trying to temper myself with. And I don't want to take the wind out of the sails of Giants fans. But coming to that Week 1 win, I questioned, and the Titans are going to play the Bills on Monday Night Football. It was, where are the Titans, right? Did we catch them off guard a little bit? And that's not a bad thing. But I didn't know fully how to digest that win outside of just being ecstatic that the Giants won the game, right? Then you get into Week 2. It's a tough defensive matchup against Carolina, but it's a bad offensive team. Like this, I think a lot of fans came into this game saying the Giants should, you were, cautious in your prediction of the Giants winning, it being a 1-score game. But I think a lot of Giants fans looked at this and said, they're terrible. Saquon Barkley's going to run all over them. Daniel Jones going to open it up a little bit more. This could be a 24-14 game, a 27-14 kind of game where the Giants handily walked away with this one. And I didn't think that was going to be the case. It was a lot more grind out than I anticipated, but this is what the season looks like. And I also think, not to trend too negative here, but I also think that like people, certainly the ones that disagree with me on the podcast, they wanted it to be like, told you, idiots. Daniel Jones is the man. And this team is all cylinders firing, ready to rock. And I think that a game like yesterday, based on where it looks like Carolina is headed this season, you take the step back and you go, okay, so it's weird to have so much positivity around what the team is accomplishing, but maybe on an individual level, not be as elated as you thought you would be on certain performances, right? Like, that's what I think is going on here. The highest level of excitement is about Wink Martindale, Brian Dable, Mike Kafka, and what they can do with this roster, not so much some of the individual pieces. It's very interesting. The Giants are 2-0, but when you look at the roster, you go, we know there's a lot of work that needs to get done with this. I think that that's what's playing into it. But I honestly came out being like, boom, check another win. Like, you're doing your job. Like, I came away with it feeling really good that it was 72 rushing yards for Saquon Barkley, and the Giants got the win.
You know what it is? I think, Tyrone mentioned it in the chat a little bit. Some of the play calling at the beginning, the Giants get gift wrapped 2 fumbles in plus territory and only walk away with 6 points. And you're like, man, that's going to bite us. That's going to bite us later in the game. And it almost did. I mean, the Giants only scored, they scored under 20 points again, Adam. And it's a difficulty where you really want to see the offense continue to evolve. I think everyone saw what the Giants were capable of. We saw electric plays from Saquon Barkley. We saw Daniel Jones step up when he needed to last week. I think we all wanted to see the next evolution, the next iteration,
right.
the next level of progression. And it feels like we're kind of just stuck in this area where we're like, this may be what the team looks like, and there's no building blocks to continue to progress forward with.
Yeah, but and that might be the case. Like, that might be what I get that, right? Like, that might be the case. Guess what? In a game like yesterday, over the past handful of years, those would have been, I can't believe it, turnovers, and you don't get the scores or whatever. But at the same time, like, I looked at it as, again, if you want to take, and this isn't even knocking. I love somebody comparing Daniel Jones' ceiling to be that of Alex Smith, because I loved Alex Smith over the course of his career. But you can't go from week 1 to week 2 and all of a sudden be like, light switch, evolution, fireworks, watch out. You don't know who's coming from where. Like, tie it back into what we discussed. Kadarius Toney is still working himself into this system. You lost Wan'Dale Robinson, who looked to be a starter in this offense. Kenny Golladay is MIA, right? So you have a lot of things that aren't there for you from that perspective, and it's an entirely new system that you're installing. Like, I don't think that all of the options, right? When Daniel Jones steps up to the line, whether it's from some of his personal limitations or the offensive scheme limitations, he opens up the Swiss Army knife and there's only a spork and a toothpick, right? Like, there is not all of the tools at their disposal just yet. It's going to take time to develop that, and that's okay. But my bottom line was, like, didn't turn the ball over, right back to the defense in those moments, right? You kept it, you got those scores, and obviously we might look at it a little bit differently had the Giants lost this game. But this is what it's going to look like. The Giants are now 2 weeks into it, where it's slow and steady, staying the course. And Brian Dable has now said this both times in the locker room post-game commentary that he's had with the team. He said, if we had lost the game today, I would still feel good about what we did because of our preparation, how we executed, and staying the course with what we want to accomplish. Like, Brian Dable keeps reiterating, it is not about the wins and losses. And I think right now it's easy to go, no, it's about the wins. Temper that, because there could come a time a few weeks from now when there are a lot of losses on the books, and you'll need to be able to look at these games the same way, regardless of the win or the loss.
Well, that's good for Brian Dable to not care about the wins or losses. But for us as fans, we care passionately. It's why we buy the tickets. It's why we get our free medium sodas from the Mara family. It's why we do this whole thing, is wins and losses. And Adam, speaking of those wins and losses, the Giants are 2-0. The Giants have Dallas coming in on Monday Night Football, and the Giants are going to be favored again going into that game.
Were they -3 in this one?
The Giants are favored by a field goal going into the Monday Night Football.
Did you notice that, Andy? Hold on. Just everyone just take a minute here. Notice how I knew the line?
I know that I was.
See that?
I was kind of like, how did he figure that out? He used Google. I don't
left
even
to
know
right, top to bottom, left to right, right?
Well, but think about this, Adam. The Giants are 2-0, and they are going to be favored going into their next game. The Giants are more likely to start 3-0 than 2-1, and it's amazing, this turnaround. So while Dable might not care about the wins, knowing that you have Dallas where you're going to be favored, knowing that you have Chicago, which is still a young team trying to figure out who they are, there is a legitimate chance that the Giants start 4-0 this season.
Yep.
And you know what? Like you said, throw all those wins over your shoulder, get as many as you can, because the thick, meaty part of the middle of the schedule is going to get a little bit more challenging for the Giants.
Yeah, and you're going to see some teams, man. Listen, some people mentioned there at the top of the show, you look around the league at the Cincinnati Bengals and what the heck is happening with them, right? Like, getting your wins matter when you can get them. And what I mean by that is just on a week-to-week basis. If you're in a game that it looks like you can win, I don't care who the opponent is, good,
Right.
bad, indifferent. If it looks like you can get the win, then that's when you want to go get it. There's going to be those difficult matchups, but ultimately stack them when you got them, and then we'll see how it plays itself out down the line. We're going to break this game down more. The offensive line, as you mentioned, is a key area that I want to look at. I do have, you can't be concerned about young players like Azudu. I can be concerned about Glowinski, though. Like, I can look at him and just say, buddy, you seem like you're one of the guys that are just kind of in there, right? The same way that you look at any of these other young players or veteran players that have had some experience, etc. Like, once you get away from the rookie Neal on the outside and obviously Andrew Thomas, everybody else on this line is just a guy trying to do their job. And I thought we would get a little more consistency out of Glowinski. I'll probably get that into a fine powder as we move forward. Any closing thoughts for you, Andrew? As the New York Football Giants, by the way, win 19-16 in their home opener in front of loud, passionate fans, 2-0, and potentially could be sole owners of the number one spot in the NFC East after Monday night.
It's good to be a New York sports fan, Adam. The Jets, the Giants, the Yankees, and the Mets all won a game on the same day. First time since 2009 that all four New York sports teams were able to get a W. It's exciting. It's encouraging. I am excited that the Giants are 2-0. They have a chance to be outright NFC East leaders after tonight. That's what we're hoping for. But man, enjoy 2-0. We can't get all over up in our head. Yeah, we can't get all over ourselves on the fact that the Giants have a winning record, Adam. Like, it's been so long. Absorb it, enjoy it, breathe it in, walk with a little pep in your step, because there's a lot of teams out there that are not going to be 2-0 come 24 hours from now.
At the end of the day, a win is a win, and the Giants got another one in there at home against the Carolina Panthers. We'll come back in. We'll take a look at some of these. There's a lot of interesting things from a stat standpoint, from a snap count standpoint, and we'll try to talk about that offense and where the Giants can continue to grow on that side of the ball, and what can this defense be when Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari get back out there, not to mention injury updates for a player like Leonard Williams as well. You get us over on YouTube. Of course, you subscribe. You like it. You love it. You want more of it. You show up on time, Marty. Get your coffee ready. Get here and prompt and ready to watch and enjoy. You get the podcast feed wherever you get those needs fulfilled. And as Andy would want, need, and nay, demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.